Silence. Welcome to the Assembly of Silence Radio Hour. This audio program has been carefully packed to the legal limit with a weekly allowance of non-governmentally approved deep thoughts per square minute of podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Judah and Noah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this will be interesting. I was just realizing that in order to have a Assembly of Silence moment, we're going to have to do some additional technological wrangling. I mean, it's basically, it's going to sound like for now, but in post-production, it's going to be awesome. I think we're in business. I mean, I won't be surprised if we talk for an hour and then we hang up and then we're like, oh, fuck. Because in case you haven't figured it out yet, we're doing a remote recording session using Zoom.us technology.
And this is a first for us, so.
Yep. So we are deepening our absorption into the technological, I was going to say technological nightmare, but good Lord, isn't there a better way of qualifying it? What could we call it?
I call it realm, the technological realm.
It's a nice neutral term.
Yeah.
Yes. We could even say technological reality because it's clearly not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, it's not.
So,
yeah.
And it has worked its way into all aspects of life. So just imagine what it would be like to try to live completely without it. I think every now and then you see someone who's trying to do that and you can see what a strain it is on their lives. Like trying to live out here without a car.
Right.
There's probably some equivalent to the urban dwellers, right? Like trying to live in a city without money. Similar type of thing in a way, because it's currency. We're talking about what's currently going on. And definitely the information technology is what's currently going on. So here we are, wrapped them in the midst of it. Let's provide some good content. What are we talking about?
We can take full advantage of the technology for good purposes.
Okay. Convince me.
Well, we're doing it right now. We're doing it right now. So.
Some would argue without providing.
Some would argue that this podcast is not good purposes.
Some would argue that. I know some people like that very closely, but I'm not yet deterred. The question is, can we put this technology to good use without actually providing any content whatsoever? I think in some respects, that is really the underlying question, because if this were a conversation with Marshall McLuhan being the kind of subject and pivot point, it might be said that it doesn't matter what the content is. It's the medium itself that's the message.
Right. The medium is the message,
so,
right? Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't matter what the hell we say on here. Just the fact that we're providing content to the medium is sufficient for our technological duties.
Right.
I was noticing that we can do stuff like this. Like what happens when I do this, just out of curiosity? This, of course, is a visual thing I'm talking about.
Oh, I see it. I can
right?
see it.
And then I can do stuff like this. So we may have to actually become a video podcast soon. Wait a second. Oh, now I'm like just fucking it up with, right?
Shit, yeah.
And then I can
say, what the fuck are you doing? Oh my God.
Oh my God. This is crazy. Yes.
Something. Wow. Look at that. Holy shit. You typed this is crazy on there.
That's what I did. All kinds of ways of communicating. So we can secretly communicate while we're recording our audio portion, and no one will ever know what it is that we're doodling around with.
I feel better.
Okay, end of episode.
And take two.
Short and sweet.
Your article.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I mean, I didn't take notes because I was driving through a blizzard when I was listening to it, but
Probably wise. Probably not a good idea to listen to that article in the blizzard.
No, it was great because I needed to be hyper focused anyways, and yeah, because I had to be like,
okay, yeah, I can picture that.
Right.
I can picture different types of personalities, either just being like, okay, I can't handle this right now, and someone else being like, yeah, I'm getting into the groove.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, good.
So your article, yes, your article was very mind heavy, but I think the topic that you were taking on requires that. It requires that level of mental acuity, and it's not a heart-oriented topic by any means. So,
yeah. So for anyone who missed last week's episode, we're talking about an article I recently posted to Medium entitled, what the hell is it called? A metaphysical model for a conscious universe of timeless change. Something like that, I think. And I had mentioned something about their, maybe Judah was going to find it a little bit too mind-centric. But and yeah, it is definitely, well, it's like I think Patanjali says something about there's many different paths to the same destination, and one of them is through the intellect. I find it an interesting way to go, but it's certainly not the only way to go, and I'm happy to count myself amongst those who doesn't necessarily need to use my head for everything. Mm-hmm. It's optional. It's maybe optional preferred, but it's certainly not necessary for everything.
That is the truth. That's the truth. And it's
yeah. What did you think?
Well, I think I thought it was very clearly. Here's what I think. I think you're a great writer. I really enjoy reading the material that you write because you write very clearly. You have a great capacity for stating your case in a clear fashion, and also looking at the potential pitfalls of what you're throwing out there. So I always have a good time reading, or in this case, listening to your articles. And
well, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess the potential pitfalls are things. That's in some ways the main focus of my attention.
I know you're very concerned about those.
Well, yeah, I think that whatever it is that I'm putting out there is the result of thinking a lot about the potential pitfalls of everything that I'm confronted with.
Right.
It seems like that's kind of the story of, well, that's certainly the way that I see things. It's like I get a sense of what's going on. I'm like, what could possibly go wrong here?
Then Arian is a place where you and I differ.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So that's a good complementary interaction of perspectives, I would hope.
Yeah, I think so.
What would be the potential pitfall of that kind of interaction between someone who had the predisposition to see things in terms of their potential pitfalls and someone who was more likely to see the potential opportunities and everything? Is that a fair characterization of your position?
I think so. I think that would be a good way of looking at it. I think the potential.
So then, yeah. So what are the potential pitfalls of our relationship?
Stagnation, like no forward movement. Like if you're like overly concerned about the pitfalls and I'm not, then we may not ever move forward. But I don't think that's the case in this. So
yeah, I don't think that's the case either. So it's a dialectic between these two different points of view. Right. And I think that we both have the sense of the value of each other's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. So
right.
That I think is a great way of moving things forward. So tell me, what else did you derive from the perspective that I was offering there?
Oh. Did I lose you?
Oh. Did I just lose you? It seems like
hello.
Something has happened here, and all of a sudden, I'm the only one talking. Although I see that Judah is still in the participant list, and yet I hear no participation. So I'm going to write it out here for a minute and see whether or not he returns. And if he doesn't, then I'll stop the recording, end the meeting, and try again. And I've pretty much run out of things to say while waiting to see whether or not he comes back. So I guess, oh, there he disappeared. He just disappeared now. Will he return? Oh, dear. Oh, yes, he returned. Here he is. He's
Okay.
back.
I don't.
What happened?
I don't know. I have no idea what the hell happened. All of a sudden, I was gone, and then I think I lost my Wi-Fi altogether there for a second. So,
you know what happened? A potential pitfall became realized into reality.
so
See,
true.
dude? See what I'm talking about?
Wait, now you're gone.
No, I'm still
Now I
here.
can't hear you.
Bullshit. Really? Okay,
Wow.
this is turning into a
shitstorm.
shitstorm.
It's
Can't
just
hear me at all.
No, I got you. You're back now. I lost you
Now
for
you
a
got
minute there. I lost you for
Boy,
a minute.
this is gonna be just like every cell phone conversation I have, where basically it's like, "Hey, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I could hear you a second ago. Huh? Oh, you just can't. Oh, I heard you now. Okay, let's talk about something. Okay, so I start talking about something. Next thing you know, we're disconnected.
Right when
That's
you
how
get into
most
the meat of it,
cell phone
like right when you get
conversations
to the
go.
meat of it, right? Then all of a sudden it's gone.
As soon as you start talking about anything except whether or not the connection is good, that's basically the only part of the conversation that comes through clearly. The rest of it is just like, okay, I'm guessing that what you're telling me is that this is the time and place of our meeting. All right, where the hell were we? Does anyone care?
No, I don't think so.
Does it matter whether we have a coherent narrative? Maybe we should let's have like 4 or 5 different topics that we just randomly switch from one to the other.
Oh, that's a
Okay,
great
one of them is-
idea.
Right? One of them is this paper. And then what else? Here, you surely have something else you want to discuss, right?
Wow. There's quite a bit I'd like to discuss, actually. But I've been thinking lately about a couple of things, to be honest with you.
Okay, please do.
And one of
Okay, please do. Please.
one of those, so these 3 things, the 3 things are this: how to experience more fulfillment in life. And
Okay.
I
I see some pitfalls in that.
I know, right? But here's the thing. 3 different things: presence, purpose, and mission, or how you serve the world.
Okay. Yeah. Presence,
Okay.
purpose, and mission.
Yeah.
What is the difference between purpose and mission?
Purpose is like receiving and honoring like your gift in the world. Like
That
what
seems to me very closely related to mission.
Well, mission would be actually the action of it, the taking the purpose and applying it. So purpose would be like receiving and honoring your gift. Mission would be taking it and serving the world with it.
Well,
So this
can you
this
have
comes,
a purpose?
This comes from a friend of mine, my friend Sadhu. This is his work in the world, and he's somebody that I've been having some really great conversations with, and it's gotten me thinking a lot. And I'm in the process of creating a course right now called the 3 keys to ultimate nutritional fulfillment.
And are these the 3 keys?
And,
Presence, purpose, and mission?
Well, no, mine are slightly different,
Okay.
but they're tied to them. They feed into them.
All right, let's hear what they are. Because I think maybe this could be a discussion about 3s. There's a lot of 3s running around out there. So
There are some 3s. Yeah. So for me, the 3s, and I've broken it down to 3 levels of nutrition.
okay.
Nourishing, nutrition for the body, nutrition for the soul, nutrition for the spirit. Okay. So the first key would be how do we really nourish our bodies? And what comes up for me, like in the work that I do, time and time again, is one, reducing the amount of starchy carbs you eat. Okay. So like grains, beans and legumes, dairy products, like these, like just foods that are hard to digest, and
a lot of dairy products are very low in carbs, actually.
Well, yeah. So let me just let's just say, how about we say, yeah, there's other problems with those. So we're going to say starchy carbs would be grains, beans, and legumes, right? So we want to get rid of those. And then also difficult to digest foods like dairy products. Okay. Inflammatory foods, let's say pro-inflammatory foods, right? And why? Because you're going to help stabilize your blood sugar. You're going to reduce inflammation in your body. And you're going to, the third thing,
kind of like lessening the burden in general.
Ease your digestive burden. Exactly. That's the third, right? So that's one key. Or not, I'm sorry, that's not one key. That's one part of one key. Let's just say that, all right? So then the other is increasing your fats, increasing high quality fats. Why? Because the brain is 60% fat. The myelin sheath of the nerves is fat. Fat is a high quality energy source. It's a building block for our hormones, our sex hormones. It's the essential for the health of our cell membranes, right? So fat is absolutely critical, and we're not getting enough quality of fats, right? So coconut oil, ghee, essential fatty acids like fish oils, flaxseed oil, hemp seed oil, these types of things. Quality saturated fats like duck fat or beef tallow. So getting in high quality fats. And then finally, eating a rainbow of colors, right? With a rainbow of colors, you've got increased antioxidant consumption. You have increased food diversity, which means increased phytonutrient diversity. And these and small amounts of a wide variety of phytonutrients work in a broad spectrum of action in your cell receptors, and to make significant physiological shifts. So the more colors, the more diverse your diet, the better off you are in the plant realm as far as that's concerned. So that's like one key, right? Now, if you eat like that,
that's basically in the body realm. We're talking about that's
the body realm. Exactly. Yeah. We're talking about, so this is the body. This is the densest part of nutrition you're looking at, right? This is the actual food that goes in your mouth. But we have to realize that food isn't just what goes in the mouth, right? There's another layer to food. And that layer would be where we start nourishing the life of the soul. And now we're coming kind of into like what I talked about in the talk, that we've done previous things on. But I want you to bear with me here on this. So now in the life of the soul, we're looking at our sense impressions, right? Mm-hmm. Our senses are what's going to form our thoughts and our feelings, which are going to inform our actions in the world, right? And so sense experiences, from my perspective, serve two main roles, and that is one, nourishment, and two, helping us stay more present in our experience of life. When our senses are nourished in a healthy way, we tend to be more embodied, we tend to be more present, and that goes a long way, right? There's presence. You have more presence in your life. Mm-hmm. If you are ingesting a ton of fast-moving media that's violent, that's negative, and you got to realize we were digesting these sense experiences. We have to digest them.
Right.
That's a lot of junk food going in. There's a lot of junk food going into our senses these days. Think pop music, think like gangster rap, which is super popular. Just think, we are bombarded by negativity, fear, the news. If you go to the movies anymore and you watch the previews, oh my God, it's just like violence after violent after violent movie.
Yeah.
It's fear-based movie, right?
But yeah,
so we have to digest.
That ties in with the whole concept in the paper of like consciousness is basically a information processor. So
right,
to process all that stuff in one way or another, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, that still is part of the conscious process. So even if it's background noise, it's still having an effect on some part of your basic facility, or you could say your soul facility. Although, I would say I like the word psyche better. I'm kind of like the three that we've spoken about many times, So reserving.
I can roll with psyche.
Yeah, I mean, psyche is kind of that thinking, experiencing part, that emotional, kind of the individual experience, right? So we're confronted with all these various experiences, and many of them are now through this information technology. So part of the thing that we were acknowledging at the outset of this episode, that we are basically swimming in this virtual realm now, various ways. It's the reality. We have some degree of control depending upon where we are. When you're in a public space, it's amazing how little control you have over the environment that you're in. And of course, many people spend most of their time in a public space. Those of us who are lucky enough to have a private space, we can decide what we're going to pollute it with when we're listening to this or that or watching what have you.
Exactly.
But of course, you can spend an awful lot of time, as I do, honestly, absorbing information that's not necessarily violent or negative. I mean, sometimes it might be negative, and there might be negative aspects to it. But there's a wide range of different types of information out there. And again, the question comes like, well, fundamentally, from a Marshall McLuhan point of view, is there a substantial difference between a super violent program and one that's not? You can make the argument.
I would say yes, there is. I would say absolutely yes, there is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think from a McLuhan point of view, he would say not so much as you might think. I think someone like Jerry Mander, too, who wrote 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television, he also sees the technology as being the primary thing, and that, secondary to that is whatever the programming material happens to be. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think it's a worthwhile perspective. It's definitely, there's a real point being made there, and I think it's a significant one. But I also think it makes a huge difference what it is that you choose to watch or listen to.
Yeah, I can't get behind that something that's not violent and potentially rich and fulfilling that you're watching, like maybe a show on nature or something like that, isn't significantly different than a horror movie. I just can't get behind that because of what happens in the physiology, the difference in what happens in the physiology between the two.
Well, I think that probably if I was going to continue to try to make the case for those guys, I'd say something like, well, there may be a subjective experience that's somewhat different, but objectively, someone is basically sitting there absorbing electromagnetic signals and being strongly influenced by them, in one way or another. So, you could make the case that it's just as bad to see a nature documentary that is kind of like turning all of nature into a museum piece as it is to watch a horror movie where, people are being hacked to bits. It's sort of like you could make the case that beautifully made nature films are like cameramen and documentary filmmakers running around out there trying to catch the last remaining bits of awesome nature before it's all just in the virtual realm, because that is in essence what's been happening in terms of our influence on the natural world. I saw something recently that was I'm sorry to turn it in this direction, but damn it, I'm the other guy on the other end of this podcast. So I saw something recently that was a pie chart of the biomass of different types of life forms on the planet. Now, I have no idea whether this is accurate or not. and I'm probably not going to remember the numbers correctly, but I'm going to say that roughly 50% of the biomass was livestock. And then another 40 some odd percent was human beings. And the rest of it was wildlife. Now, again, I have no idea if that's accurate or not. But if it is, I mean, just to think of the concept is pretty interesting, right? It's something that is circulating in the media of the vegan world. So you could probably find it relatively easily. And I guess if I had my shit together, I'd look it up right now so I could share it with you. Let's see whether or not I can actually accomplish that. So I will stop interrupting you in a second here. But yeah, it's quite possible that we have already diminished wildlife to the point where it's a negligible percentage, or maybe a very kind of minority percentage of what's happening on planet Earth, which is a real frickin' wake-up call when you think about it. And now, back to you, Judah.
Thank you, Noah. And what I want to say though is that you still can't say that there's still a radical difference between watching a nature program. Like everything you just said is legitimate, perhaps, but it's all interpretation. That's all interpretation. You're assuming that somebody's going to be having these thoughts about nature, like, oh, it's being turned into a museum. Like that's a story. But if I am watching a nature program, and whether it's documentarians running around trying to capture the last bit of nature before it's gone or not, that's not in my awareness as I'm watching a nature program that's filling.
It may or may not be. It may or may not be. But what you're saying is that from a psychic.
Once again, here we go. Let me finish. Once again, that's all still an interpretation. The effect that watching nature is going to have on my physiology is radically different than watching somebody get cut up into pieces in a horror movie.
Well,
so
it's different, but it's only different from the point of view of the individual experiencer. In other words, each individual is having their own particular psyche experience in relation to the medium, to the.
And I would be shocked if somebody said, watching that nature show filled me with such horror and dread, I could never possibly imagine watching that again. You know, like I felt like I was watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I watched that, movie about the beauty of tropical rainforests or something like that,
Right. And clearly there is a experiential difference there, but when you look at the kind of, what's the right way of putting it? When you look at the aggregate, like it may be that unfortunately, okay, this is terrible. I really even shouldn't say what I'm going to say next.
Well, we are straying way off here, but let's keep going. Which we're famous
by the way.
For this. I can see that. Yeah, I can see it. It's up.
Yeah, so there is an article here that's on ecowatch.com. Humans and big ag livestock now account for 96% of mammal biomass. Now, I will do some reading and see whether or not this actually makes sense, because I do not believe everything just because there's an article about it. But it's a fascinating thing to consider that, 4% of mammal biomass. Okay, so that's a little different, but nevertheless, all mammals, that's a pretty big category, right? 96% of mammal biomass is humans and our livestock. Yowza. Anyway, I won't say what I was going to say, because not only do I think it would be just such a big bummer, but I also can't remember what it was, thankfully. So please continue.
Oh, it's great. So, where was I with that? Oh, okay. So we were talking about the senses as nourishment, right?
Yeah.
So the senses serve two purposes, as far as I can tell. They serve as nourishment, right? We're constantly, we swim. We are swimming in food like a fish does water, right? Everything that's streaming into us is some sort of food source for us.
Yeah, I mean, in the technical terms of the article I just wrote, I would just call that a signal. There are signals, because ultimately, even
signals
the food we're taking is signals to various systems within the body. It's all just messages,
right? Which is going to either be something that stimulates us one, it's going to have to be digested. We're going to have to digest these signals. Everything gets pulled apart, picked apart, sent to different areas of the brain, and then put back together as a complete picture, right?
Well, we could make the argument so in the terms of the talk that I was working with, that would be like processing. And we could make the argument that there is a lot that kind of goes unprocessed. And so one of the problems that people have with digestion is that they have a lot of undigested material that kind of and you could say that there's a similar thing happening with information, that it's like a backlog of just shit that never actually really gets dealt with. It's just like, just throw it in there and pack it in and just keep packing it in, and eventually you'll need it. And before you know it, there's like a concrete brick in there that you can't read anymore, and it can't, it's like impossible to get through the intestines, and so
you're constipated. You're stuffed. You're overfed, right? Yep. Think of how hyperstimulated we are right now. We are overfed and malnourished on every level. We are overfed and malnourished on every level.
But now I wonder to what extent this is substantively different from periods in the past where human beings were just ruthlessly attentive to every detail of what was going on around them. I mean, imagine what it would be like to live in an environment where there were a number of large predators who could at any time take you out. I always think about the deer. Like, it's like they're just the most incredible creatures, and they're beautiful, and they live in the wild, and it just seems like this is amazing until you realize that they're afraid of everything all the time, because the slightest noise and they're just run, So clearly the kind of vigilant mode, that there's some kind of relationship now. Like we've developed this thing where we're overloaded in a way where we would in the past have been super sensitive. It's like kind of some sort of opposite thing, but both of those things are pretty taxing when it really comes down to it.
Well, here's the thing though, is that, you're helping me with my point here, is that when you are more connected with your sense impressions, like when you're more connected to your senses, like attuned to what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you're feeling, then you're more present. You're more present in your environment. And the more we're present in our sense experience, the clearer our thinking can become, the more balanced our emotional life can become, and the more efficient and effective our actions can become. And we're different than deer. We're not deer. I mean, yes, our amygdala and other aspects of the brain are scanning for potential threats a significant amount of times per second, like 100 times per second. Our brain is scanning for potential threat because of exactly what you just stated. There's we're part of the food chain, right? Mm-hmm. Originally, we were part of the food chain,
and we still are. And fundamentally,
and we still are
from a
fundamentally
microbacterial point of view, at the very least.
Yeah, or human to human, right? So,
God, I hope not.
Well, I don't mean it like that, but our biggest threat mostly now is from other humans, right? So,
yes, that's true. But not part of the food chain, at least not yet. Or there are some articles that suggest that might be an issue.
Oh God, no!
Some parts of the world.
Don't bring up another article.
I won't look that one up. But hopefully we're not quite at the Solvent Green point yet.
So this is like, how are we nourishing our senses? Are we nourishing it? Or what are we feeding our senses? Are we feeding it junk food, right? Like Fox News or any news for the most part, these days, violent movies, mindless dribble. Like, are we feeding the senses with that type of stuff?
Okay.
Or are we feeding the senses with nature, with beautiful scents and aromas, beautiful things to look at, pleasant sounds, these types of things? Like, how are we feeding our senses?
Okay, I'm gonna challenge this idea a little bit here, and it's not going to be as bad as what it was I was thinking before, but it's still a little bit dismal. Let's just speculate for a moment that it's possible that because of the increased destruction of the natural world, that we see a lot more places that look like the set of a horror film than one might want to admit. In other words, it may be that a significant portion of reality is actually being converted into a horror film. And that, like any species, we seek to adapt ourselves to the environment that's occurring. So if you take a look at what a place like Syria looks like right now, for instance, it's a nightmare. It's a complete nightmare. And people are aware of this in various ways. And you could make the case that some people who are really into horror movies are kind of adapting themselves to the conditions that they see coming down the line on some level, and that it sort of makes sense in a way, because you could see how, if unfortunately it goes that way, it would be maladaptive to try to maintain a pleasant environment.
Why? Why would it be maladaptive to try and maintain a pleasant environment?
Because
in the
it
midst
would be
of destruction.
Because it would be like clinging to something that's no longer there, in a certain sense.
Just fuck it and just blow it all to hell?
Well, the blowing to hell is happening. Like, we can't really address that. We don't have we can make choices about what we're going to view, but we don't get to choose whether or not the powers that be are going to blow things up. They're doing that.
Right, but we do get to choose what we do get to choose what we want to preserve in this life.
Of course, but we don't get to necessarily preserve it. We can choose what we consider to be of value, without a doubt, right? And then at some point or another, the rubber hits the road where we meet reality, and it goes one way or the other. Now, I'm not saying that we necessarily have to go down the road towards everything starting to look like Aleppo, but right. I do believe that there's enough of that kind of thing happening now that it's becoming ever more a reality that a lot of people are having to deal with. So I think that needs to be folded into our understanding of what we're doing, because there are a lot of people out there with the mindset of that. I think that's one of the problems that people who go to war and try to come back to our society, it's just such an incredibly jarring, fucked up disconnect to come back into a society that's basically like pretending there's nothing really wrong. I can't get that out of my system. It seems to me, and I didn't even go to war, but to me, it's like, this is the reality of the things that are happening on a huge scale. There have been a number of nations destroyed over the last decade or more, like really destroyed. Libya is completely destroyed. Afghanistan and Iraq are a huge mess. I mean, there's a lot of places that are a mess, but wow.
No. So here's the thing: you're talking about the infrastructures and whatnot. You go to Afghanistan, there is beautiful mountain ranges.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely true.
So you're talking about maybe cities and human infrastructures.
Well, because the actions, the bombings take place all over the country. So little towns get bombed. All over the country,
but there's sure. But the reality is still that Afghanistan has absolutely beautiful mountain ranges.
Absolutely true.
All sorts of incredible nature. So
absolutely
that's
true. But the question is, what is the nature of the consciousness? Because we're talking about psyche now, right?
So we haven't gotten to spirit yet, but we're talking about the psyche. So
unless, I mean, psyche hopefully includes feelings as well.
Yeah, exactly. So what are the feelings of the people, not only the people who suffered the bombing, but the people who recognize what that is, in that region of the world, and all the people who have suffered around the world as a consequence of these things. That's like a very, very deep.
Yes. And yes, I hear that. And what I'm saying is there's a difference. If you take a person and you sit them in one of those beautiful mountain ranges overlooking the beautiful mountains and just being able to sit there and absorb the beauty of nature, that's what I'm discussing. That's what I'm talking about here.
Well, I don't know that would be something that someone in that situation would be inclined to do at this point. It seems to me that when things are disturbed to this degree, the ability to appreciate that is marred by the suffering. And I think really when it comes down to it, the desire for revenge is really probably the main thing that's going on there.
I don't know. I think nature is the great healer. I think nature, the power, I would never underestimate the power of nature on somebody, because we are nature. We are completely tied to her. We are an expression of her. And to be able to go to a place that can take your breath away, I would never underestimate the healing potential and power of that opportunity.
Well, I think that it would take a pretty extraordinary individual to put aside the loss of family, of society, of all the various deprivations that are suffered when a country is torn to shreds. It's not going to be, I think it would be very rare that there would be anyone who had gone through that, who would be able to feel a sense that everything had been put right, to be able to, experience more fulfillment in life simply as a result of reconnecting with nature. I don't think that is something that there may be a few, and I think that there is a capacity for forgiveness in the human heart that is beyond what can be believed at times. I've seen parents who have forgiven people who have murdered their children. It's very unusual. I don't think it happens a lot, but it can happen. And it's certainly probably the best outcome. We would, I think, all hope that somehow that would be managed, although it's not for me to even hope that, really, because I wasn't in that situation. And it's the country that supposedly I have some say in, although I don't think I really do. I don't think that democracy is really a democracy. It's not a democracy. I wrote a song when we started going to that war called Not Democracy. You can, I'll put a link for it in the show notes. And I saw that this is where things were going to go if we allowed the powers that be take us to war and start bombing countries for no frickin' reason at all. But that's what happened, and it seemed like it was pretty clear at the time that most Americans did not support it. And I think that really probably when it comes down to it, that's been the case ever since, and now even more so. So the weapons that are being used by this country to destroy other people and other nations, it's really not what the people in this country want, but it's what's happened, and we're talking millions and millions of people's lives. So, oh my God, I know. I'm sorry, Judah. It's gone terribly off the rails here.
This is what I'm just giving you space to vent. No, that's all I'm doing. Just giving you space to vent.
Anyway, okay, so we can. Everyone understands our position at this point. We can move on to
way off the tracks here.
Is there something else that you wanted to say about the psyche level, or do you want to move into the spirit here?
Let's move into the spirit. No.
Let's move into. Everyone's been wondering when the hell we would get there. Get us out of this morass of the psyche. The body and the psyche, it's like that's where all the trouble is. That's the whole problem right there. If it weren't for this body, and if it weren't for this crazy emotional, mental, heart-mind thing, we wouldn't have any problems at all.
That's why Rudolf Steiner says disease or illness begins, its root is in consciousness.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting observation. I remember the first time hearing that going, wow, that's really quite, and that fits in really beautifully with the concept of, what do they call, like the fallen angels and that whole thing, that like basically it's this sort of delusion that the elemental personalities of being get involved in, where they're enthusiastic initially, and the next thing you know, they're like completely wrapped up in the drama of it all.
Yeah. Too identified with it, right?
Yes.
So,
identification, I think, is a huge, I think it goes on the list right now of what we're talking about. ID.
Yeah. Too identified.
Yes, it's always been interesting to me that we have ID, identification, and then we also have the id, which is sort of this like little guy inside of us that just wants to do whatever the hell he wants to do. And it's sort of not really what identity is. I mean, we usually assign identity that's quite different from what the id is, but in a way, who we really are is what the id is. It's just a very bizarre kind of coincidence. Is it a coincidence that ID?
Well, maybe I wouldn't say who we really are. I would say who we are pretending to be. Who we're pretending to be.
Yeah,
who we really are.
There's like 3 layers. Here's another 3, right? There's like the thing we're pretending to be, which is kind of like identity, right? Personality, you could say. And then we have the id, which is sort of like the kind of truth of what we want, right? Underlying all of that. And then there's who we really are, which is the I, the spirit that is kind of the universal being, right? Without all of that attachment, associated. So there's another Trinity in an episode of Trinities. We're going to have an episode of Trinities in the future where we talk about nothing but groups of 3. It's going to be amazing.
I think that's a great idea. That's a really great idea, actually.
Okay, it's on the list.
Threefold order, the threefold nature of life.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So not to bring up any more, because I know where this is going to go with you. I have a feeling. Let me not say I know, but I have a feeling. I have perhaps a premonition of where this next section is going to go with you.
Okay.
And that is in the realm of spirit.
Maybe you should write it down.
Okay,
you should write it down on the screen in front of you, so I'll see what it is, and then I'll tell the audience.
I don't know if I can share my screen or not.
Of course you can. There's a button at the bottom that says share, but then I'm not sure. You know what? Fuck it. Just tell me what you're going to tell me.
Okay.
Oh, we can do chat here too, though. There's this thing here, right? So I can then just
Here we go. Hold on.
Oh,
can you see that?
Yes, I saw something. Yes. Oh my God. Now I'm seeing your computer. It's amazing. This is awesome. It's so exciting.
This is incredible. We are learning.
I remember the first time that I connected 2 computers with a serial cable, and me and a friend were standing in the same room typing messages to each other, and we were thrilled. It was so freaking cool. It's never been as cool since.
It's amazing. I love it. I love that you got a jazz out of that. That's awesome.
Okay, what am I looking at here?
So you're looking at the 3rd level of nutrition here, as far as I'm concerned. So the first level was the body, right? The most dense, or the densest form of food, right? Actual physical food, vegetables, fruits, meats, things like that. All chemical reactions require nutrients, right? Substance matter. The next level was sense experience, So being nourished by our senses. And then on the soul level is what I would say, our realm of our thoughts and feelings, our will impulses or our psyche. And then the third layer of nutrition would be nutrition of the spirit, which I like to call the realm of the heart. And this would be the location of where our purpose and our mission in life reside, is in the heart. So the heart is the seat of the self, another tricky term we've discussed in the past, but I would say it's the realm of the spirit, right? And so what research is finding right now is what a profound impact working with the heart has on your entire physiology, specifically getting into something called coherence or heart coherence, which is a state of energy efficiency and flow in which the mind, heart, and emotions are all aligned and in sync with each other. And so this state is an incredibly powerful state in the physiology. And what gets us in coherence is positive emotions. So when we cultivate and sustain the felt experience of positive emotions in the heart, like gratitude, appreciation, care, compassion, empathy, devotion, joy. When we cultivate that feeling experience in the heart and are able to sustain it, what happens is it brings the body into a state of coherence. And when the mind, heart, and emotions are all aligned and in sync with each other, other systems in the body sync up. The endocrine system syncs up. The immune system syncs up. And what happens is we are able to attain more resilience. And resilience is the ability to prepare for, respond to, recover from stress, challenge, adversity, right? So it's like kind of like an inner battery. So you get greater resilience, you get strengthened immune function, you get more balance in your autonomic nervous system. We actually know that the heart is the organ that identifies imbalances in our autonomic nervous system, which for those of you who don't know, that's our sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, react, and our parasympathetic, our rest, digest, repair, respond mode. So
that's interesting.
So when you do this, okay, so now you also get reduced cortisol levels, which means you have reduced stress levels in your physiology, all right? So now, the more you practice this and you cultivate these sustained positive emotions, you start to get an overall greater feeling of positivity, optimism, gratitude, calm, peace, relaxation, which you also get an inverse experience of stress, exhaustion, worry, depression, dissatisfaction with life. And the reason why is because coherence is an energy efficient state. It is a state of efficiency. So when we nourish our heart with positive emotions, we can become more receptive to life and our purpose in it, and we can increase our capacity to serve the world with efficiency and effectiveness as well. That's my third and final layer of nutrition.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to say now, right?
You're gonna be the counterbalance to the optimism.
Well, not quite. Yeah, I mean, so what was your what were you thinking? What was your feeling of what my response would be to this section?
Well, there's a lot of tricky terms in here, like spirit and location in the heart and purpose and mission.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think what I would say is that what you're really talking about here, from the way that I understand it, is you're talking about the psyche still. All of these things are ways of resolving the discordancies within the psyche. Because
they are, but you're using the strength of the heart, which is really the seat of the self. So you're using the most spiritual organ in the body. Really.
From my point of view, the strength in the spirit is in relinquishing.
There is no striving. There is accepting. It has no, and many of the things that you describe, I think, are actually a result of that process. But I don't think it really has much to do with purpose and mission. I think that in a sense, what you're doing is you're placing your life in God's hands. You're placing your existence in God's hands. You're absorbing into the void, comfort with nothingness, accepting the impermanence of all things.
And that could be your purpose and mission in life.
It could be your purpose and mission in life, but you don't know what your purpose and mission in life is, and that's one of the things to let go of as well. So it could be a process that would in some way or another make you more or less fit for whatever your purpose and mission is in life. But who are we to really determine what our purpose and mission is in life? I mean, we of course have things that we would like to do. We would like to see things accomplished, and we would like to put our energy towards them. But we don't really fundamentally get to know whether or not those things are fulfilled. Some people will tell us that they are, and other people say, well, no. So
I would say, who are we to not know? Who are we to not know what our purpose and mission is in life? We are children.
Yes, we're children.
We are children
Children don't know. Children have no freaking clue. You know, I think that what you're expressing there when you say who are we to not know is, yes, of course, there is the striving for and realizing some kind of sense of self-determination that is essential to, I'm going to say, the human experience, because I think maybe it's less of an issue with other creatures, but it's probably there to some extent. But we all have this sense of wanting to fulfill purpose. And, you know, a lot of times it's associated with some sort of biological imperative or, you know, ideological goals and what have you. But fundamentally, there's so many instances where you see that it just doesn't quite go the way it was intended to, you know, so having that kind of final sense of what it is that we're actually doing in this life, I think is an act of hubris. And that's why I believe that the bottom line is that we have to trust, we have to have faith that by handing ourselves over to something larger, because we are just children, we are just mere mortals, right? We're tiny little creatures on a tiny thin surface of a tiny planet around a tiny sun, because our star comparatively, you know, and whether something is bigger means that it's more or whatever, that doesn't matter. The point is just that there is so much going on. We're really not capable of making a determination as to what it's all adding up to. So in many respects, we do our best, which is what covers the whole psychic realm that you're discussing here. We do the best to do the best in our lives, to make a really good effort of it. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge that we really are frickin' ignorant of the big picture. And we are, in many respects, in the hands of forces that are far beyond anything we could comprehend. That's where I think the spiritual domain is in that latter self-renunciation side. And I think that most of what you're talking about here with the heart and the mind is psyche. But, you know, part of this is a discussion about categorization, so it's all open to interpretation. But then you would have to add another category for the relinquishing, you know, that the place behind all of the intention. There's a lot of intention described here. Like, we want to feel better, of course. Everyone wants to feel good and unified and all like well put together in the whole deal. And it makes sense to try to achieve that if possible. But I think that quite often that is simply not a possibility. And I'm not going to harp on it, but I think the examples that were provided earlier is pretty stark when you think about what's the internal being of someone whose entire society has been ripped apart by smart bombs and drones. It's like, you're not going to be able, very, very few are going to be able to just go, okay, I'm going to get beyond everything that's happened here. And I'm going to reconnect with the fundamental essence of spirit. And I don't know what the plan is, but I'm going to place faith. It's like, okay, I'm sure there are some who who can do that, but I don't think it's going to be easy for many. It doesn't seem like that would be a plan of action that, you know, if you were going to go and treat people in Libya and see if you could assist them, I have a hard time imagining that would really do the trick.
You know, I love that you pick really extreme situations.
Well, the problem is that they're real. Like we're not living in them by the grace of God.
They are, but they are real, but they're not. You know, to the average person who's going to be listening to this podcast, they have absolutely zero capacity to not capacity, but what would I say? There's very little connection to that, right? In this country.
That's why part of the reason why I think that needs to be discussed. I think we should all feel a very deep connection with it.
I agree. And there's also, you know, that
and I would imagine that many people do. I wouldn't be so quick to assume that people don't feel a deep connection with it. I think that probably there are some who don't, but I do think that, and I would imagine that anyone who's patient enough to listen to us talk might be more the type of person who has given this some real thought, because it is a huge factor in everyone's life on this planet. You know, all the biomass on this planet right now is suffering from the reality of the things that are being done to it. And whether that's...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The soul sickness on this planet is so great that it's paralyzing.
Yes.
So what we don't need is more people paralyzed who don't feel like they can, that they don't have a purpose and a mission in life.
Right.
We need people. We need people that are going, I've got a purpose, I have a gift, and I want to serve the world. That's what we need. I want to serve the world. I want to make the world a better place. That's tricky. I understand. We can dive into the topic of intention right there, right? And I know how you are with that. But the reality is,
anytime anyone says, I wanna, as soon as someone goes, I want, it's like, okay, well, what is it? It's you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans.
Sure. But the reality is that we as a planet need people to wake up to their gift, their God-given gifts in this life, and serve this world right now. Well,
if what you're trying to tell me is that people could do better things with their lives, you have no argument from me whatsoever. When I see some of the things people choose to do, I think it is really truly tragic in the circumstance that we're in.
Absolutely.
So God willing, we might see that turn around somehow. I don't know how, because I do think that people are entranced by these. What is it in Westworld? There's these violent delights have violent endings. It's something like that. It's a key phrase that's repeated. And it's like, yeah, people are taking delight in these spectacles of violence, and it's freaking horrifying. I mean, I was horrified by Westworld, and it was a really intelligent program, but season 2 sucked. Although I think there was some intelligence behind it. And I do think it's basically the work of the devil. Unfortunate. Really unfortunate.
Yeah. I think I'm feeling.
How do we balance?
Feeling.
It's like, that's really the basic question. How do we balance in this unbalanced world?
That's right. How do we maintain resilience in the face of imbalance?
And how do we deal with a balancing approach that doesn't push against the thing that's off balance? You know, that's one of the biggest problems, is that there's a tendency to want to go the other way from the bad shit that's happening. And it seems like on a fundamental, it's like it goes against the laws of nature to try to achieve something in that manner. Like I'm kind of interested. Oh, now my dogs are making a terrible noise.
Okay.
Can you hear that?
I can.
Okay.
I'm feeling like we're at a wrap here.
I had one more thing I wanted to say, and if I could remember what it is, I'll say but I don't think I do remember what it is. I got distracted.
I feel like my bladder is at a wrap here.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. I remember what I was going to say. I'm going to make it really quick.
Oh, so good.
There's this new idea in physics about how the universe works. It's called quantized inertia. I may have spoken about it briefly.
Oh,
and
you spoke about it in your article. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things about it is that it suggests the possibility of a thrustless drive, which basically means you could accomplish movement without force in the normal sense of the word force, without pushing against something. What you'd be doing is you're creating an emptiness, and that's the motivation for the force. You create an emptiness that you then move towards. And that's why I think there's a basic spiritual principle at play in the philosophy.
That's beautiful.
So that's why I associate the spirit domain with emptiness. It's about letting go of our desires, of our aspirations, and even our idea of who we are and what our gifts are and what we're here to do, all of the kind of sense of purpose and mission and what have you. And that's where the real presence is, to get back to that first Trinity, because the real presence is in absolving ourselves of the burden of all of those objects that we've created in our mind to try to figure this thing out. Now, I'm not saying that that's like where we need to be all the time or anything like that, but I'm saying that is, for me, what the spiritual domain consists of, is that emptiness, and that it informs the psyche. And that also informs the body, that there's this kind of, I would say that really there's a spirit-psyche connection and there's a psyche-body connection. But there really isn't a spirit-body connection. The spirit...
No, the psyche is definitely the intermediate between the two.
Yes. And that would be energy, right? So energy in the article is the interface between consciousness and what you might call its surroundings, consciousness surroundings, which is made up of networks of other consciousness. That's the concept there. But you could call it matter, because from the point of view of consciousness, it's just the stuff that's out there, right? And then the relationship between it is mediated by energy. And you could say that what happens in our consciousness is that when we're engaged in the psyche, we're spending energy. We're trying to basically navigate the objects in the heart mind and bring them to some kind of resolution so that we can solve the dilemma that we're in because of the body that we're in. Right. And that the spirit is a rest from all that shit. It's like, okay, yes, these things are of concern to you, but guess what? It's not the whole picture, and you're not going to be able to figure it out. There are limits. We're mere mortals. We are having to place our lives and our faith and our understanding even into the realm of things that are beyond our knowing, beyond our understanding, which coincidentally is going to be the subject of a forthcoming article in my Medium channel.
Oh, I like that.
The categories of knowing. It's I'm not going to get into it now, but I could say that it was inspired by Donald Rumsfeld quote that's been kicked around a lot. That's kind of a incomplete picture of what is a really useful and complete picture. You never know where things are going to come from. Sometimes some really useful things come from some sources that you just don't want to have anything to do with. But, it might actually be really interesting to sit down and have a discussion with Donald Rumsfeld. I bet that would be super interesting, and I would be fascinating. I would be, I am not a fan. I think he's a war criminal, but I would be very interested to talk with him. But I just think in general, there are a lot of people who are not what we would hope for in the world. And yet we can learn a lot from them in various ways. So I think it's good to keep an open mind, an open heart mind to all kinds of people. So I like listening to people who I disagree with and who I think are wrong. Quite often they'll say things that I just never would have thought of if I hadn't listened to them. So I'm a big fan of that. I think actually maybe in some ways it's a pretty good rule for negotiating the information highways and this kind of perpetual environment. If you do have some control over your information stream, have it play you some stuff that you don't like. Like listen to things that you don't want to hear. You know?
True.
Check in with people who you would never in a million years listen to. Like the one that is at the bottom of your list, put them at the top and just see what it is that they're on about. Because sometimes it's surprising. And if after like 20 minutes or a half hour, it's just intolerable, well, go find someone else who you can't stand and listen to them. Okay, go take a piss, and this was a lot of fun. I hope I wasn't too much of a bummer, and let's see whether anything got recorded, because God knows it may just be wash. In that case, it was a great conversation.
Right. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, throw us a bone by subscribing to this channel, visiting our social media pages, and hitting the various like, love, and clap buttons. We welcome all comments, criticisms, and random thoughts. Our email is silentassembly@protonmail.com. And if you want to be an angel, we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/silentassembly. We look forward to serving you again soon. In the meantime, remember, turn that thing over a few times before you pick it up and take it home.